All right. Okay. So I think we can start. We have enough quorum to do this today. Um, can you see my screen?
Yes.
So, good evening once again. I think last week we were supposed to handle this very foundational lecture that will set the tone for your graphs on research fundamentals, how to apply SIM. We did a bit of an introduction, but not too deep. So I intend to take us through this 2-hour lecture also to help get us the grounding. Okay, so but before we talk about these things as complicated as data analysis or surveys or interviews or philosophies and so on, we must first understand what research actually is. Is that okay? And why it is even important in the first place, right? So many people actually would think that research is only something that academics, professors, or something only maybe we do when we are writing a thesis, okay? But in actual fact, there is more to this, you know. Research is actually something that happens every day in our lives, in business. Yes, yes. Who is disturbing the class? Please mute your mic. Who's that? Thank you. So as I was saying that a lot of people actually think that research is for academics or maybe when you are supposed to do a thesis that you submit. But in reality, or the reality is that research is actually everything that happens around us in our daily lives, you know, in society, in government, you know, technologies around us, in our businesses, even in our homes, all right? How we look at our children and assess them, the thinking processes that we go through are, in a sense, in some way, some research in itself, all right? So whenever we are asked, you know, the question, or someone asks the question and tries to answer it using evidence, you know, instead of opinion, they are doing research. So, for example, if a company asks, why are our sales dropping? Okay. Or our university or GCTU asks, why are students performing poorly? You know, or even if government is to ask maybe why, for example, unemployment rates, you know, going up, you know, it's research which will help us, you know, to answer these questions, not just through our intuition or our feeling, you know, or our opinion, but through a systematic, you know, and logical manner. All right. And so, having said that, by the end of today's lecture, we should clearly understand what research is. Okay. Why research is important. Okay. the characteristics of good research, the different types of research, research philosophy, you know, and research approaches, and the difference between methods and methodologies, all right? And so these particular ideas would actually inform or form the foundation of everything that you will be doing, you know, to learn in this course within this semester. And so I'm imploring each and all and sundry to particularly, put yourself in the spirit to try and grasp this foundation, because it will be important that once you build a solid one, okay, going forward, what you build upon will be much easier. Right. Yes. So let us start, with the most very basic question. All right. What exactly, is research? And this class will be very interactive. And so when I ask the questions, I'll be expecting some feedback before we can proceed, So if I may ask Joe Francis, if you are asked what exactly is research, what will be your answer? Read what is on the board for us, please. Green. What is research? Yes, can somebody volunteer to read what is research? I would want a
So I'm
volunteer.
reading.
All right.
Research is a systematic process of asking a question. Oops. Sorry, I think I had a little interruption. Research is a systematic process of asking a question and using the evidence to answer it in a disciplined and transparent way. It's not
Okay.
guessing or copying. It's a purposeful activity that starts with a problem, forms a question, collects and analyzes evidence, and concludes with justified findings. It produces the best possible explanation or evidence-based conclusion, giving available resources and methods, also acknowledging limitations.
All right. So we are told that research is what? It's a systematic process of investigating a problem in order to do what? To generate knowledge and find solutions. Okay. So pay attention here and mind the key words here, which is what? It's a systematic, okay, in that research is a what? It's not guesswork. It's not personal opinion, okay? It's not just simply sitting on your phone or your laptop or your PCs in the office and searching Google. You know, research follows what? A structured approach, a structured process. Normally, it would include several stages, okay? So first, a researcher actually identifies what? A problem or a question, in that there has to be something that the researcher is motivated to investigate. But to do that, you must identify a problem or a question. That is the first stage of research. That there must be a clear, identifiable problem, okay, or a question that requires an answer, a solution, a proposition, okay? when that is identified or as the first stage, the researcher goes into the second stage, which is to do what? To design methods to investigate the problem. Because when you identify a problem, the end game is to get a solution. But in between there has to be some system, some methods, okay, that you deploy to investigate that particular problem. Those methods, when you identify them or when the researcher identifies them, all right, it leads to the next stage of asking, okay, with these methods, what type of data would I need? Or what type of evidence would I need to be able to analyze in the fourth stage to draw conclusions and recommendations? And so the systematic approach requires that what? There is a problem or a question that is identified. There is a method to investigate the problem, okay? Building on that, that method, when it's identified, requires a certain input, that is data or evidence on the ground that can be inputted to be analyzed through a certain rigorous approach to derive a conclusion and to be able to make recommendations. So let me give you a simple example, all right? Suppose I give you notices that many students fail a particular course, all right? I may ask, right, why are students failing? Okay, that is probably what? A problem that needs to be identified. Why are students failing? Your possible explanation might include what? Say maybe what? Students are not attending lectures, all right? Or maybe the course material that is being used or the teaching methodology maybe is too difficult, all right? Or students are not studying effectively, okay? Now, so instead of guessing, right, the lecturer or the students can conduct research, okay, by doing what? Collecting, identify a certain methodology to collect data from the students, all right, and analyze the results for the outcome or the solution to the problem that the researcher or the lecturer asked. Is that okay? Right. So this then is what is called what? Research. So research, therefore, helps us to move from assumptions, what we are thinking, our feeling, okay, into evidence. That is what research proceeds to do. It moves us from our assumptions to to evidence and outcomes. Having said that, and established this foundation of what research is, all right, research comes with certain characteristics, all right? So there are characteristics of good research, okay, such that not all research, is good research, okay? Because research must carry some attributes that it must exhibit to be able to qualify as good research, okay? So what would actually make good research? So we have here these attributes, okay, that a good research must demonstrate. So for the first one, we say that a good research must have clarity, so such that the study may have very clear research problems and clear objectives. In that, if the problem is not clearly defined, the entire research will become very, very confusing. So there must be clarity in the research problem, and there must be very clear objectives to be able to what be ascribed as good research. And so in your final project work or your research work or your thesis, among the first things that your lecturers look at in your proposals, okay, are some of these things, that your proposals for the research must demonstrate clarity. The must be very clear research problems and very clear objectives, okay? Then we have relevance, okay? That research should address issues that matter. You know what I'm saying? It must address issues that are relevant to society. Okay, so it could be social problems, such that whatever you want to investigate, if it's to investigate the cause of road accidents on the Accra to whatever destination road, okay, these things must be, these are relevant, this is the outcomes will be relevant to impact social change. It would address social problems, okay? Relevance could be on an organizational issue, that you are an institution and there are HR problems relating to lateness or staff attrition. And if you want to investigate, you can say that the outcome can be very relevant to the organization because it's an organizational issue. Okay. Then the relevance to must satisfy the purpose of maybe addressing a theoretical gap. In academia, we deal with a lot of theories. Okay. And so if you want to carry out a certain academic research using some theories, it should be addressing a theoretical gap, not just a mundane outcome of a contribution that is known. Then we have the third attribute of rigor. What does rigor mean as an attribute for good research? That the research, or the researcher must use a good research, or the researcher must use what? Appropriate methods, all right? Appropriate methods and apply them diligently and carefully, okay? Because what? If you use wrong methods or poor methods, they tend to lead to what? Unreliable results. And the most dangerous thing in academia or in research is to use wrong approaches or methods to get outcomes that you find you ground in the realities of our lived experiences. Okay. And so rigor is important. The fourth characteristics of research is what? Credibility. Nowadays, everybody goes around, um, um, making all sort of predictions, because prediction is also part of research. I'll come to explain that, but without any method, people are predicting all sort of things. This one will die here, this one will live here, this one will do this there, you know. And so people come and make statements that are not backed by facts. And so there is no credibility in the research. In fact, there are a lot of posters when MPP and NDC are going for a contest. You know, we have all sort of academic posters who apply all sort of methods that lack credibility, that lack rigor, that lack relevance and what have you. But yes, still, they will come say it boldly and loudly, trumpet it loudly and loudly until some of these things eventually sink in and we take them hook, line, sinker, and eventually turns out to be a hoax. You know, so your research or good research must have the attribute of credibility. The researcher should be able to understand how the research should be conducted, you know, and how the conclusions, you know, were actually reached. Okay. Because I need to emphasize that transparency actually does what? Increases trust in what? In research. Are you with me? It looks like I'm having a monologue. Is the class with me?
Yes, sir.
Are you following?
Yes, sir.
Right. So
Yes, please.
then we have another key characteristics of what? Ethics. You know, that ethical integrity, the respect for people, all right, respect for communities and institutions, and even the responsibility to avoid harm to data subjects and so on and so forth is another key characteristics of a good research. So, for example, if you conduct interviews with students, you must do what? Ensure that the responses that you get remains what? Confidential, because ethically, feedback that is used in research coming in good faith, there is a responsibility to protect or data subjects, assure them of the confidentiality so that your interview participants can engage or interact with you freely, you know. And finally, bear in mind that the ultimate objective of research is to improve what? Outcomes, to make what did I say? To make contribution towards um, um, a solution, you know, to address a problem, to contribute to theory development and so on and so forth. So a good research should what? Contribute towards developing new knowledge. All right. It must contribute towards new knowledge. It must contribute towards new inventions. It must contribute towards new innovation. All right. Secondly, it must also what? Contribute towards testing um, existing theories. All right. But what is even a theory? You know, so a theory is a set of very connected ideas that explains why or how something happens. All right. And so in research, the theory helps to make sense of reality. And so if our research should contribute towards testing existing theories, they would help in explaining or making contributions, you know, towards existing theory and proposing new theories. Research to make a contribution also towards solving a very practical problem and improve policies, okay, or practices. With this said, I mean, take note that without contribution, actually, you know, research has very, very little value, because research must necessarily, make a contribution towards significant value. Is that okay? All right. So now let us move to another very important aspect of research, okay? Which is the objectives of research, okay? So here, when researchers actually conduct studies, okay, they simply are not collecting information just randomly. All right. So every research project has a very clear objective. Bear in mind, every research project has a what? A clear objective and a meaning, a purpose, okay? A purpose that the research intends to actually achieve. The objective of the study would determine the type of research design that will be used, the kind of data that would be collected, and the methods of analysis that would be applied. And so in academic research, there are several common objectives. But today we will focus on these very 5 important ones. We'll take them one by one and understand them so that when we proceed from here, we will know which of the research objective types are we doing. So we have exploration. We have, let me get someone to read this through, and then when we come back, I can explain them. Can someone volunteer to read it? Objectives of the research.
Please, the writings are not too visible enough.
They are not. Sorry about that. Let me see if it helps. Is it okay now?
Yes, please.
Okay. So help us. Objective of the research.
Objectives of research. Exploration. To understand solutions not well understood.
Okay, so hold on. I'll explain that, and when I'm done, we'll go to the next one. All right.
Okay.
And so, what is and let us begin with exploratory research. Okay. As you read, he said is to understand situations not not well understood. Right.
Yes,
So,
please.
as the name connotes, this type of research actually is conducted when a topic is not well understood, okay? Or when there is a very little information available about it, all right? When there is very little information about a phenomenon, about what is happening, and you want to understand it, you go on an exploratory research, all right? In these cases, because there is a limited knowledge of the phenomenon, in most of these instances, the researcher is not trying to test what? A theory, because theory is an explanation of what exists and the relationships what between them. Okay. And so the researcher in this case in an it will not be doing an exploratory research testing theory or to measure a precise relationship. Okay. But the goal of to explore, is to explore an issue, all right, and gain initial insights into what might be happening. Okay, and so you can think of exploratory research as what? The starting point of investigation. Explorers move from one place to the other to investigate, to discover. And so exploratory research would become the starting point of all investigations. It helps, researchers to understand the nature of a problem, how the problem exists, why is it like this? It helps the researcher to identify important variables within a certain ecosystem, within a certain space, and when that insight is gained, it helps to develop ideas, for future studies. So exploration would start as the basic or the foundation to explore or gain new knowledge, and then to set a foundation for future studies. Okay, let me give you this example. For example, you imagine that universities begin noticing that students are increasingly using nowadays ChatGPT or AI tools, right, to complete their assignments. Okay. So at this early stage, because artificial intelligence, mind you, has recently got recently getting into making inroads into our educational space, right? Hitherto, we used to have what? Technology enabled learning, educational technologies, blended learning, and so on. But in recent times, we agree that artificial intelligence tools like ChatGPT, Gemini, and the other GPTs have become very useful in this in our educational setting now. So, given that it's not a new phenomenon, right? You would imagine that researchers may what? Not yet know exactly like how students are using these, right? Or are using these tools. Because we are marking your script, we are seeing that the students' submissions are fantastic. All of a sudden, students that you have known like 2-3 years who couldn't write any good English are writing and submitting very impeccable, well-referenced um, um, outputs to you. But when it comes to exams and they will need to use their pen and paper, you begin to find that there are much disparities. So this new area, researchers may want to know exactly what, like how students are using this, what impact are they making, or what impact is it having even on their learning, right? So what would the researcher do? Using an exploratory method, he might want to do what? Conduct interviews with students, right? Or do what? Or hold focus group discussions, or even workshops with the students, or the faculty members, or with the management, right? And then to do what? To explore, all right? Because these are new areas. I want you to imagine and apply exploration as I explained this. Okay. So the researcher might want to conduct what? Interviews might want to conduct what? Focus group discussions where people will come and talk about their experiences, their lived experiences using, or students will come and explain, we use ChatGPT for this purpose, and it's very good. Or when you put it inside here, the lecturer is teaching, we are able to quickly check this, and then the lecturer would ask, or the researcher would ask, but when you do this, are you able to critically reflect? Are you able to think about it this way? So you explore using what? Questions such as what? How often are you using the AI tools? For what purposes are you using them? What advantages or challenges comes with them? Okay. Mind you, the purpose here is not to do what? It's not to measure relationship between this or test any proposition between this and that, right? So there is no testing relationship. Instead, what? The purpose is simply to gain deeper understanding of the phenomenon, okay? That then is exploratory research. Is that okay? Can I get some feedback?
Yes, sir.
So we understand exploratory research.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
All right, good. Elvis. Right. So let's go to description. Can you read? Let's
Okay.
move to the second. Yes.
Description. To describe what is happening or existing patterns.
To describe what is happening or what?
Existing patterns.
Right. So what? It aims to describe characteristics. Okay. It aims to describe patterns or behaviors within a particular population or a situation. And so it becomes descriptive research. So do you recall that what I said earlier with exploratory research? So while exploratory research would ask questions like what might be happening, okay? Is that not the case? Exploratory research will be asking what is happening in here. So I want to see, I want to find out, all right? Descriptive research would ask what? What do you think it will ask? What do you think it will ask? It would ask what exactly is happening. Is that not the case?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
What exactly is happening? In other words, let's say, so descriptive research would what? Provides a clear picture of a situation. What is happening is describing it. So you are in the house, we came out, you saw this descriptive, describe it as it is. It provides a clear picture of a situation. Let me give you an example, right? So, let's say, for example, a researcher, right, may conduct a study examining certain study habits of, say, this, you are level 300, right? So, a researcher may want to conduct a study to examine your study habits. Distant students, learning students, study habits of level 300 supply chain or procurement students. That are the case. So the researcher will do what? He might want to collect information about how many to be able to examine your study habits, right? They will have to collect information on what? How many hours you have spent studying each week. How often maybe you attend lectures, all right? And whether you prefer even studying alone or even in groups. and what type of even learning resources that you use, right? Good. So after collecting that information, the researcher can describe patterns within that data, okay? Because we would have taken a lot of data, but they can describe patterns within that data. For instance, they might find that amongst your cohorts now in your class, all right, that maybe most students study between 5 and 10 hours per week, okay? Or that maybe students who attend lectures regularly tend to use maybe different learning strategies. Is that okay? So therefore, descriptive research, helps us to understand what patterns exist within a population. Is that okay? So it helps us to understand what patterns exist within a population. Then we go to explanatory what? Research. Can you help us?
Okay. Explanation. To find out why something happens and its influencing factors.
Find out why something happens and it's influencing what? Factors. Again, if we said that descriptive research does what? It helps us understand what patterns exist within a population. Is that not the case? So explanatory research goes further. Okay? It goes further. It extends description and goes further and asks why something what happens. You get it? So descriptive is the what patterns exist. And then in the explanatory here, it does what? Why something happens in there somewhere. Is that okay?
Yes.
Say.
So the goal of explanatory research is what? To identify relationship between variables, okay? And determine whether A influences B or B influences C. So you should explain it that there are two friends in your class. They came independently to school. Kofi met Ama or Kofi met Shaibu. They became friends. But through Kofi's influence, maybe Shaibu has, either gone positive or has gone negative through his influence. You will need an explanatory research approach to try and identify that relationship or that variable whose influence impacts or influences the other the more, and even determine whether one factor influences the other the more, and so on. Okay? So the goal of explanatory research is to identify relationship between variables. I'll give you another example, right? And normally I want to use university students because that helps better. Example, suppose a university GCTU observes that students who attend lectures regularly tend to perform better academically, okay? This is what probably the university has observed or has, yes. So a researcher or you as students, might want to conduct a study to examine what? Whether attendance, right? Because the position is that students who attend lectures regularly, right, tend to perform better academically. Is that not the case? So you want to conduct a research to examine whether attending lectures regularly, actually influences what? Academic performance. Okay? Here, you are wanting to find out whether one variable influences the other so that you can explain and say, yes, attending lectures regularly is a very key ingredient in contributing to the outcomes of what? Higher academic performance. Okay? So here, the researcher or you, the student or researcher, may what? Collect data on what? On students' attendance records and examination results. And so methods matter. So you collect what? Data on students' attendance and records and examination results, because what? You are looking at attendance and its influence on academic performance. So if you are looking at attendance and its influence on academic performance, then the type of data that you pick for this particular exercise has to be on attendance records. Is that not the case? So that you can analyze, okay, whether there's a relationship between these two variables. Okay, so if the analysis shows that the students with higher attendance, or the students who are regularly coming to class have higher, better grades or achieve better grades, then you or the researcher can or may conclude that yes, indeed, that attendance is an important factor influencing what? Academic performance. Is that not the case?
Yes.
Are you with me?
Yes, sir.
So explanatory research, therefore, is what? Concerned with understanding cause and what? Effect relationship. Is that okay? Good. So let's consider the fourth one, which is predictive. My lady, can you please do this for us?
Okay. Prediction. To forecast outcomes like student performance or customer retention.
Good. So this is forecasting. This is lotto. Okay. This is research that is lotto. So predictive research, that's what? It attempts to determine whether certain variables, okay, can be used to do what? Forecast future outcomes. So yes, the last was it in 2004, you have historical data of 23-24 repeating on Wednesday. Then it came to this thing and added +1 in 2013, and then when it came in 2013, it actually didn't come 20, it turned the number, and you see, then on the basis of that today, you can make a prediction. So predictive research attempts, as its name connotes, to predict future outcomes or foretelling or forecasting. Okay. So once researchers understand the relationship between variables at play, right, they may use that knowledge to predict what is likely to happen in the future. So let me give you an example. Another one. So organizations, just a second. So organizations getting paused. Yeah, sorry. Yeah. So where were we? We're on prediction, right? Yeah. So I was giving an example on the prediction as another example aside the Lotto one. So organizations may want to know, say, which factors predict productivity, right? And they will cause to researchers to examine variables such as what? Because productivity will know that to increase productivity, there has to be factors such as what? Those in HR, productivity, say training, motivation, right? Leadership style, the leadership style of the top management, right? To increase productivity at your workplace, we're looking at you say your work environment, and ultimately, yes, so your compensation, your salaries. Okay. So researchers may look at this and examine them. And once they do, they will analyze these variables, okay, and can even help develop models that can predict which employees are likely to perform well, and even likely to contribute to factors that contribute to higher productivity. All right. So again, predictive research is widely used in businesses, in artificial intelligence, in business analytics, in economics, and say maybe in marketing. And so for some of you who have an affinity for any of these um, particular subjects, you can apply predictive research by forecasting and modeling and predicting outcomes based on existing variables that are established within a certain system to make this forecasting. Is that okay? So finally, let's look at the final one, which is what? Evaluation.
Okay.
Read for us.
Evaluation to assess if programs or policies are working effectively.
Yes. So the objective of a research would what? Would assess if programs or policies are working. Okay. So for example, this type of evaluation research will focus on, say, maybe whether a certain program or policy or an intervention is even effective, So governments, programs, universities implement new initiatives, government roll out national programs like the school feeding program. Government is about to launch what? The Kukon Kitten Kitty program, or what again? I mean, we've had several programs, okay? So our government is even introducing this digital learning program in universities, all right? Or the 1 million coders program, right? Now, after this program has been implemented, then what? There is need to conduct what? Evaluation on the impact, to determine whether the program, improved what? Learning outcomes. All right. Or the digital coders program, if they are able to roll it out and at the end of 3-4 years, there will be a need for an evaluation research. Okay, that would help decision makers to determine whether the programs should be continued or improved, because you would get feedback that can expose gaps or weaknesses within the implementation plan, project scope, or whether even the project, should be discontinued in the first place. All right. So, in establishing objectives of the research, all right, we have looked at 5 such considerations. And so, to summarize the key ideas here, before we move on to our next slide will be what? Right. So, as a way of summary, we have said that exploratory research helps researchers to do what? To gain initial understanding when there's little known about a topic. So Christopher Columbus reportedly would have left his Americas or wherever he came from into exploring the new world when people were living there already. They claim that he came to discover them. So he explored and came and discovered the Indians. And then Don Diego de Zambuja, we are told, also as an explorer, came all the way through to discover Cape of Good Hope or wherever it is. Then Mungo Park, we are told, also another explorer, moved all the way through the Congo and then all the way through to discover the Congo River and then the Niger River, So exploratory research, helps gain initial understanding, okay? When there's little known about the topic. Whilst descriptive research also does what? We said it provides a very clear picture of what patterns or characteristics within a population. You remember the example I made within that population? Right. So when those patterns and characteristics are established as in terms of what it in its description, how you describe it, there is explanatory research also that investigates why this certain relationship exists within these two variables. Whilst Kofi and Nabu becomes this, how is he able to influence him in this way, positive or negative? All right. And then we have the prediction. When we are able to establish that with such a character like Kofi, who has a positive or negative influence on Shaibu, we are able to predict with certainty, if not 100%, you can forecast. All right. And say that this particular outcome would come because of this existing data that I have used to make this prediction. Is that okay? Then we spoke about the 1 million coders program, the Nkete program. These programs, researchers, when they are rolled out, researchers will want to do what? Assess whether these programs or policies or interventions are effective. And if they are not effective, what did we say? There are recommendations for program continuation, for program improvement, or program what? Discontinuation. Is that okay? So, to wrap up this particular session for the objectives, it's important that we know how to design, as researchers, you know how to design your studies and then choose the appropriate research methods. Is that okay? Right. So let's pause for a moment. I want you to think about this for a moment. If a university, pay attention, please. If a university wants to understand why students are not attending lectures, which of these objectives would most be appropriate? Exploration, description, explanation, prediction, or evaluation? Think about it for a moment, and then let's discuss what your answers are. Is the question clear?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
All right. Yes. So the university wants to understand why students are not attending lectures. So they want to understand why. Which of these would apply? Exploration, description, explanation, prediction, evaluation. Let's discuss this. If anybody wants to make a contribution to this, the floor is open for you. Yes. Who wants to answer it?
Sir, please,
Like what?
exploration.
Yes, go ahead and explain why. Convince us as to the why.
Okay, so with the exploration, it helps investigate or discover more information as to what your research is. That's why I chose the exploration.
It helps to
investigate or discover or seek more information on a particular research or why you want something.
Yeah, so in particular reference to this particular question, you would want to investigate what? Why
University students
are not attending lectures. Is that not it?
Yes, please.
All right. Elvis, do you agree with her? Elvis, Prince, Atta. Is Elvis with us? How about Emmanuel?
Yes, I agree with her.
Who is this?
It's Emmanuel.
Why do you agree with her?
It's because it's something we all don't understand, so we are yet to find out why such thing is happening. So it's
Exactly.
exploration.
Exactly. So in exploration, we say that we are the Mongo Parks, isn't it?
Yes, sir.
Yes, we are not our forefathers who didn't explore anything. Everything is Western, isn't it? So we'll go explore it. Now, yes, so and then there's motivation for the research. Can you read for us? Motivation in research.
Say please, it's not too visible again.
I see it.
Yes, please, but some parts.
Okay now.
Yes, please. Motivation in research. Motivation is the why behind your research interests. It sustains efforts through demanding processes like reading, data collection, analysis, and writing. Please, should I continue?
Yes.
So academic, completing assignments, thesis, or publishing.
So it's saying that motivation, one of the motivations can be an academic motivation. Okay. So it's saying that, yeah, you are motivated to do this research because a requirement to complete an assignment or a thesis, or you are required to do academic publishing. All right.
Yeah.
Go professional.
Professional, improving workplace performance, solving business problems.
Yes. So it can be you can be professionally motivated. You are in your institution. All right. There are institutional issues that you have identified that when you research and you are able to do what? Improve the workplace performance. I mean, you manage a fleet, you're a fleet manager, and you realize that your drivers are clocking in some very outrageous fuel and racking up some very outrageous fuel bills and maintenance costs and so on. And so you must cause an investigation. You must cause an investigation to do what? Explain something. We are saying that we must explore, we can predict, we can explain, we can do what again? We can describe, okay, to help solve a business problem. Then there is also the personal curiosity. I mean, there are some people who are just naturally motivated to do something, want to find out what is here. You know? It's just passion, pure passion. Some are just one don't care. It's in his house, something is doing. There's possibly some light that is hanging in loose by the electricity pole. He's hearing it doing every day. He's just lying down. There's no curiosity. There's no motivation. By the time he notices the house is bent. All right. So curiosity is passion that fuels. It's a motivation or it's a passion that fuels people to do research. Must be personal, or even the lived experiences of people. You know, there are people who are subject to all sort of inhumane treatment. Their lived experiences are not worth, living for. You know, you are motivated to want to take a personal interest in investigating to find out the stories of their lived experiences. Okay. Then also there is the social one. You want to contribute to society. You want to be seen as a renowned scientist that has contributed to knowledge, okay, to addressing injustice. Your research came out with the fact that, yes, Ghanaian legal system, judicial legal system is terrible. Once you are thrown down the gauntlet, you go through the hole and you are remanded. It takes forever. The cases don't ever get to be heard. You know, judges, lawyers are taking quotes for bribe here and there. You want to be the champion investigator. You want to be a nurse. You want to be Manasseh Azure. You know, you are motivated by social need. You are motivated by positive energy, good cause, advocating for change. So motivation in research has to be grounded in 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5 key points that we have. And so when you are writing your research proposals or you are writing your thesis, there is a need to clearly establish what your motivation is. But why is motivation even necessary? Why is it needed? It is because when you get to know what is motivating the researcher, you are able to establish whether there is a researcher distance or there is bias, or if the person is motivated by greed and he goes to take money from an assessing establishment to just give them outcomes that they want to know. If you get to know the motivation, then you know that the outcomes are not credible. But you want to see a well-motivated research where the researcher is saying that I am motivated to do this research because of social justice, because of personal curiosity, because of professional advancement to improve business solutions or problems, or for academic reasons. I want to publish to contribute to knowledge. So that is what motivation in research is. So it's situated in the heart. It is the very core of the research. They must be very well motivated on these key 4 areas. Is that okay? Any questions? Let me give a 5 minutes pause for questions. Otherwise, I've been getting you in a monologue for quite a while. I think it's been an hour now. So, any questions? I'm hoping to finish because I intend to do some group assignments and so on. If you are not able to do it, then we can look at another time. But any questions? I want any questions. If there are no questions, is there any question? Any questions? Okay. All right. If there are no questions, let me even hear no, sir.
No, sir.
No, prof.
That's right. Good. It's good to know that I'm with you
No,
here.
sir. No, sir.
Great. Is everything all right?
Yes.
We follow it.
Yes, sir.
Good.
Yes, we are.
So then there are types of research. There are various types of research, right? Who can share some insight into some type of research that you know of? Can anyone help? What type of research do you think is available at our disposal?
Yeah, can I speak?
Anyone who can volunteer? Types of research. Yes.
Yeah.
Will I call him? Yep.
Can I go ahead?
Yeah, sure. Go ahead.
Okay, so we have applied research. We have quantitative and then qualitative research, and also a basic research.
So it's mentioned, it says there's something called applied research. There's quantitative research. All right. There is what? Qualitative research. And then you say, there is what? Basic research. Okay. Anybody else? Yes. Anybody else? Okay. Right. So you are right. Okay. So there are 3 types of research and quite a lot of other variants. But either way, any type of the ones that are scattered all over the place, like applied research and so on, would ultimately fit into any of these 3 categories. Okay. So read for us the first one.
Okay. Quantitative, numerical data, measurements, statistical analysis, test relationships, measure frequency, compares groups.
So if you hear quantitative research, right, they're saying that it mainly focuses on what? Numbers and statistical analysis. Where in this type of research, researchers are mainly collecting what? Numerical data. What did we say? And using statistical tools to analyze relationship between variables. Okay. So for example, a survey of 500 students measuring what? Study hours and academic performance. We recall that in the explanatory research explanation, we cited the example of a researcher who wanted to find out what the learning outcomes are through academic performance and attendance regularity, right? And so similarly, a survey of 500 students measuring study hours and academic performance, right? So this type of research would clearly be what? A quantitative research. Because at the end of the day, they are dealing with numbers, okay, numerical data, and we are employing measurements and what? Statistical relationships, testing frequencies, and so on and so forth, okay? Then we have the second one. Read.
Qualitative, meaning experience, perception, context. Understands how people interpret situations and social processes.
So clearly, what this means is that if I was to give you a case study of say 200 students in say 15 students in your level 300 class studying research methods, all right? I want to understand your study hours and study patterns and how it improves your academic performance. You do 30 hours of class every day, and I want to measure that output against your that input against that output and see whether you are performing well. And I'm to tell you to use qualitative methods to understand how they do this. Will I be right?
Sir,
Will
please
I
come
be right?
again.
So I'm saying that it's saying qualitative methods, that's what? It focuses on understanding experiences, all right? Perceptions, people's perceptions and meanings. Such that instead of numbers, all right, this type of research uses what? Interviews, observations, and textual data, all right? That makes qualitative research. And I'm saying that, so if I was to say, give you an assignment and say, in your class, uh, use qualitative research to find out the relationship between students' study hours, students use about 500 study hours and are able to perform academically well. So use qualitative methods. I'm saying or asking, can that be correct?
Yes, sir.
Can that be correct?
Yes, sir.
So argue for us why that can be correct. The question again, I'm saying that, okay, let me take the quantitative methods first. Your quantitative methods, we are told that is purely numerical, isn't it? By data that uses what? Measurements and statistical analytical tools to test relationships, to explain phenomena, right? To forecast. They are basically numbers, numerical data. That is well established, isn't it? Now, we move to qualitative research. And she just read that qualitative research, that's what? It looks for meanings, all right? It tries to understand people's experiences and perceptions, right? And so instead of numbers, this type of research is rather using what? Listen carefully. It's rather using interviews instead of numbers. It's using interviews. Quantitative would use numbers, would source data through surveys to get numbers. They will get 500. They will get 4,000 using surveys, using all sort of counting techniques. By qualitative research, interviews, because you have to talk to people to get their numbers, to get their data, um, you would have to use interviews You would have to use textual data. You would have to use observation to get these outcomes. Is that not the case? So my question was, now with this, if I was to tell you to use qualitative methods to do a research in your class to try and find out the performance of students vis-a-vis the number of hours that they put in their learning program, and associate it with the learning outcomes or output, would that be right? And you said yes. Would you want to change your mind? Is the question clear?
Yes, sir.
Okay, Sarah.
Yeah, that's clear.
So what will I be right to tell you to use qualitative methods to do that research?
No, please, that to be quantitative.
And then why no?
Because looking at the reason that you stated in your question, you
Yes.
need to use data to
Yes.
analyze that.
No, you don't need to. You need to use numerical data.
Yes, okay, thank you. Numerical data.
Numerical data. Okay. So what type of data will be required for the qualitative in this instance?
A number of hours that we read in the class.
Yeah. So if you were to use qualitative, I also ask you to do a qualitative research in this instance. I would ask you to interview students. All right, student interview so that we get textual data, and then we can apply other methods like transcribing that data to get meaningful outcomes. Okay, so that is it with qualitative. So qualitative research deals with what? Investigating meanings, focuses on understanding the experiences and perceptions, okay, for meaning. Is that okay? And so, for example, another example, if I want to interview students about their experiences with online learning, if I want to come and investigate or interview students to hear their perception about using artificial intelligence tools for learning, okay, then I'm trying to understand students' perception, students' understanding, okay, students' experiences. That is what qualitative research seeks to do what? To do. Then we have the third type. And the third type is what? Read for us.
Mixed methods combines quantitative and qualitative approaches for stronger understanding.
Yeah, so we have the mixed method, all right? So as its name connotes, you see, it is the here and here of the research. So it takes a bit of quantitative, it takes a bit of qualitative. So once the quantitative tries to explain or try to put things out in numbers for us to see, and the qualitative expresses what? It tries to explore perceptions and meanings, okay? A mixed method approach would combine the best of these two. And so in one research framework, methodology framework, you would have a bit of this in a certain sequence. And so in mixed methodologies, we'll be doing that in our subsequent lectures for your better understanding. There are several types of mixed method combinations. And so you would have where quantitative comes first, so where quantitative comes first, where you go in to find out what relationship exists within this and this and that, and you get this outcome. Then you would want to now get more insights into that particular outcome. And so if, for example, it says that the students' experiences, the research, there's a research that finds that your class there's a relationship between AI tools in education like ChatGPT. There's a direct correlation between AI tools in education and your learning outcomes by way of improved grades. Okay. If there's a research that uses quantitative method that has been established, now a mixed method would want to go further to want to actually find out from the students, okay, by way of getting their perception to see whether they triangulate, to find out whether they converge, to find out whether, yes, if this says this, is it true? If you interview the students, are the students able to say, oh, yes, this chat GPT is a game changer. It's mind blowing. In fact, we are using it in ways that look, we never dreamt of before. But had it not come, in fact, I would have had very poor grades. Okay, my grades have improved significantly. I am performing in subjects that hitherto I would not have done so well. In fact, I'm using not only ChatGPT, I'm using Notebook LM to synthesize my notes. It's able to summarize what the lecturer says, what the, and so with a quantitative outcome and going further to add a qualitative feedback from that particular sample, all right, you are able to triangulate and say that, yes, these two outcomes complement each other. You get a story. And so in mixed methods, there are set combinations where quantitative comes first. And so you can have quant, which is quantitative combinations. You can have qual, which are quantitative and qualitative combinations. You can have qual, quan. There are several mix that you can look at. They all have their strengths. They all have their weaknesses. We'll be looking at them as we go on in the semester, okay? And then the sequences in which they come, there are the sequential exploratory, sequential explanatory. There are the several of such mixes. And so it will be interesting when we get there. But for your purposes now, we are saying that there are these three types of research with various combination mixes that are available. Having said that, let's move on into a slightly very deeper concept in research, and mostly this particular one is requires more conceptual clarity or more deeper insight. So I would want us to pay particular attention to, which are the research philosophies. Okay. So when we talk about research philosophy, what exactly are we talking about? What exactly are we talking about? So we are referring to beliefs that researchers have about knowledge. Okay, please pay attention. When we talk about the philosophies, we are talking about the beliefs, the inherent beliefs and biases that researchers have about how knowledge and reality is created. In other words, research philosophies address very two key important questions. The first is what? Knowledge. What is knowledge? And then the second is, how can we obtain reliable knowledge about the world? Okay. So these are the beliefs that researchers have about their philosophies. So it is important that you grasp this so that you can position yourself within any of the philosophies you find yourself, okay? Because as you proceed in your research, you would have to clearly demonstrate which of the research philosophies you are coming from. You must show what is knowledge for yourself. And then you must show how can knowledge, or how can we obtain reliable knowledge about the world. It must be situated in a certain philosophical paradigm. And among the philosophical paradigms, there are 4 of such paradigms. Okay, which we have here. So is this Sarah who was reading for us? Read for us.
Okay. Research philosophies. Positivism. Reality is subjective, measurable, leads to quantitative research and hypothesis testing.
Okay, so before we get here, so we are discussing this for philosophies, right? Let's start with positivism. You said what? Reality is objective, right? It's measurable. It leads to what? Quantitative research and hypothesis testing. This summation is very important. Positivism is a research philosophy, that's based on the idea that reality exists like independently of human perception, okay, and cannot be measured objectively. So the reality exists. Look at this concept. Reality exists, but it's independent of our human perception. All right. It can be measured. It can only be measured objectively. All right. So researchers who adopt such a positivist perspective believe that knowledge should be based on what? Observable facts. Okay. Observable facts and measurable data. In other words, I'm saying that they believe that the world can be studied using scientific methods, similar to those used in maybe sciences, natural sciences like physics and chemistry. It has to be measurable. So, for example, a positivist researcher, who is studying student performance, right, might collect numerical data such as what? So if he's studying student performance, a positivist researcher, mind you, be very attentive here. A positivist researcher who is studying student performance, okay, might collect what? Numerical data, such as what? The performance will be looking at the exam score of the student, isn't it? We'll be looking at attendance scores and even the study hours that the student put in it, right? Because he wants to find out the student's performance overall. And then would use what? Statistical analytical tools to examine the relationship. So that is positivism for you. Okay. They want to examine things, they want to observe things and be able to say 1 + 1 is equal to 2. X plus this equation will lead to this clear correlational relationship. If this is moderated by this, or if this is mediated by that, okay, it will lead to this outcome. Positivist. Hello, are we here? Do you get it?
Yes, sir.
So take note. So because positivism focuses on measurement and objectivity, researchers who normally adopt this philosophy seem to be what? Quantitative, seem to use or like quantitative research methods. And so in your study design that you eventually do, if you begin to think that, oh, I will need a survey method, I want to test this relationship, you will begin to see yourself as a positivist. Your research philosophy and paradigms are positivist thinking. And there are quite a lot of positivist thinking approaches, but then the core of it is that positivism deals with what? Measurement, and focuses on measurement and objectivity. Okay? Because the goal of the positivist research is to identify patterns and relationships that can be what? Tested and what? Generalized. Sarah, let's move on to the second philosophy, which is interpretivism.
Okay. Interpretivism. Social reality is constructed through human experience. Leads to qualitative methods.
So here you see there's another philosophy that throws you onto a what? Qualitative methods. Okay? It says what? Interpretivism takes a different view of knowledge and reality. They are quite different. So whilst the positivist is looking at wanting to ground knowledge on observable facts and measurable data, right? The interpretivist is not looking at observable data and measurable data, okay? It views knowledge to be constructed differently, all right? It views knowledge and reality differently. So instead of an interpretivist, assuming that reality can be measured objectively, okay, they suggest that our realities or reality is socially constructed and shaped by human experience and interpretation. Take note. What do I mean? I'm meaning that the interpretivist indicates that to understand social phenomenon, right, we must try to understand how people perceive and interpret their own experiences. Am I clear? Let me give you an example. So, for example, suppose again the same preamble from the previous one. All right. Suppose that a researcher wants to study how students' online experiences are. Okay. Right. What will a positivist do? A positivist approach might measure exam scores, right? Or time spent on online platforms. No be so.
It be so.
Right. It be so. Okay. Because a positivist might want to look at exam scores, numbers, time spent. But an interpretivist researcher, no. They instead will do what? They will come and conduct interviews with the students. Then you tell them your experiences. You talk plenty. You speak plenty English or P or any language. You talk about how you feel. And what challenges and experiences you face. And how you even interpret the learning environment, right? So interpretivism, right, focuses on meaning, context, and human experience. And note that researchers who adopt this philosophy, okay, often use what? Qualitative research methods, such as what? Interviews, interviews, observations, or document analysis, okay? Interviews, observations, document analysis, focus group discussions, workshops, okay? their aim is not to produce any generalizable like numerical results, okay, as in say maybe because you have a population or sample size of say maybe 1 million, you tested this, and so you can generalize. No. The qualitative researcher, no. The interpretivist does not seek to generalize using qualitative research methods. It's only there to try to understand, get a deeper understanding of the human behavior and then the social processes. Okay. Now, let us discuss the third philosophy, which is pragmatism. Let's go.
Pragmatism focuses on what works to answer the question, supports mixed methods.
Yes. So, you see, each of the philosophies eventually fall within the three continuums of the research types, isn't it? So, pragmatism is saying that it takes a more flexible approach, so that instead of committing strongly to one logo lie, kind of one philosophical perspective, a la positivism or interpretivism, it takes a much more flexible approach. It focuses on what works best for answering the question. That is just the objective. What best works? If I pick one here and I pick some here and I pick one, they will answer and solve the problem and give me an outcome. Alhamdulillah, we'll go that way. We are pragmatists. Okay. In our street language, we'll say it is the quack philosophy, that pulls a bit from here and there, and that pulls a bit from here and there, insofar as it works fine, that's fine. So that's pragmatism. Okay. In other words, I'm saying that pragmatist researchers, are less just concerned with, if you like, philosophical debates that you must, if you are a positivist and you are dealing with numbers, reality is constructed this way, you have observable facts. And so if 1 + 1 and the numbers don't add up, that is not knowledge. That is not reality. And then if you are the interpretivist too, your interpretivist things in some way according to this. No. The pragmatist is less concerned about any of those debates. They don't want to care. They are in between, all right? They are concerned with practical solutions to research problems. That's it. So I'll give you a typical example. When I was doing my PhD, I got entangled in one of these philosophical quagmires. Initially, I started my research premised on qualitative research. I was using a grounded theory approach in qualitative research design. You'll get to know that eventually as we proceed. And I ran the whole gamut of my thesis to my final when I submitted for consideration. And the feedback that came almost broke my heart. It turned out that it was not enough because I had just developed a model that required that I had to now test the model to actually see, because I went on an exploration. I went exploring to want to discover new knowledge in educational technology. All right. When I found that knowledge, I was holding it. I said, this was what I found. And when I submitted, I hit a snag because those who were evaluating my thesis were people whose philosophical worldviews were not, hey, you can't come and explore knowledge and just leave it. For us, knowledge is measurable. Knowledge is facts and is measurable, must be quantified. So the review committee gave me a feedback and said, no, you need to do 2 more papers or add 2 more objectives to your work. Test the model and let's see it works. So what do you think what I did? So now I had to now test the model that I had developed. And in testing models, you are testing them against a data set or a population. You are doing a survey to seek feedback. And so I tested across several continents in Africa. I did a bit in Saudi Arabia. I did a bit in Dubai, some universities in Dubai, some in the UK, some in Denmark because I did a PhD in Denmark, and then quite around and some bit of in Namibia and Ghana and Nigeria. All right. So having done that, then I could say that the exploration I went on and I found this phenomenon that I described. I found that within this pattern, all right, A and B was what I found. I didn't leave it there. I tested it. When I tested it in a much larger population, yeah, there's some fairly, model fit that yes, that if you add this variable and add this variable to this variable, all right, using Shaibu and Kofi and their influences, the outcome will be this. And so I grounded it, and then that was fine. Eventually I shifted my position from being an interpretivist, okay, into a pragmatist because at that time I needed to survive. And I didn't have time to fall into the philosophical debates of either positivism or interpretivism. Now I had to go for the life-saving approach, rescue approach of what? Pragmatism. All right? Pragmatism. What practical solution to research problems? What was practical? So that was pragmatism, okay? So a lot of times, pragmatism would apply for what? Mixed methods. You pick a bit of this and you pick a bit of that. Bear in mind, okay? So let's summarize. Critical realism is more advanced. We just don't need to bother about it. All right. So let's summarize. So the key philosophies here are positivism. All right. That assumes that what reality can be measured. Interpretivism, that what emphasizes understanding human experiences, perceptions, and what and interpretations of their lived experience, and which is mostly associated, we say, with what? Qualitative methods. Pragmatism, we say, focuses what? On practical solutions and often combines different methods, okay, to answer research questions effectively. Is that okay? Yes. So any questions at this stage? If you need some clarifications on anything, let's discuss before we go on to the next. Any questions? Any questions?
Not yet, please.
Not yet. Why? Okay, should I be asking questions? All right. Okay, so I'll ask questions. We have what time are we closing the lecture?
I have a question.
All right, shoot.
No, we have question, but then with the critical realism and the positivism, yeah, it's a bit confusing. Can you go over one more time?
Yes, I haven't taught you critical realism.
Oh, okay. So I was watching
it.
this one and then and it wasn't very clear.
Yes. I said critical realism will take you into the realms of critical realism. Don't bother too much about it. For your purposes at this stage, okay?
Okay, sure.
We would only need these 3 positions. Make our life easy.
Thank you.
Now, yes, so if you ask me questions, I would ask you questions. So let's do this. What time are we in the lecture?
5 o'clock.
5.
Yes.
Oh, so I'm going past my time.
Yes, please.
Oh dear. You have another class? All right. So let me see. Oh dear. Okay. I just left with a few slides. If you can give me some few minutes, we can wrap up. Is that okay? So types of research philosophies, and research approach. Yes. So all right. I will be giving you an assignment. I intended to give an in-class assignment on the research philosophies. Okay. I'll share that on the group platform. Have you put yourself into groups? Have you put yourself into groups? Please, let's answer this quickly.
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
You have how many groups?
7, I think.
And of how many students?
2 each.
2 each in a group?
Yes, please.
Okay. All right. So I would share an assignment for you to just apply your understanding of your philosophy to it. Okay. And then you can move forward. You can send it back to me as feedback on my on the platform for. Yeah, so then it brings us to research approaches. Okay. Let me ask this question again, a quick one. So if you wanted to study how, say, lecturers feel about the use of artificial intelligence in teaching, which philosophy would you use? Let's think about this for a moment, and then we can move to the research approach. I'll come back and then ask you what approach, what philosophy you hold. Okay. So there are several approaches and strategies in research, and we have deductive reasoning, and then inductive reasoning, and then adaptive reasoning or approaches. So with deductive approaches, as the name connotes again, they start from theory, okay, or using existing theory to data and then testing hypothesis. So in this approach, the researcher begins with a theoretical idea or concept. So in your research proposals, in your research writing, you would submit an initial draft where you would have gone to review several theories that you think applies or you can apply to find out relationships or to extend a certain theory or to test a certain theory. You identify a gap and want to make a contribution to a certain theory. Okay. So you would begin with theoretical ideas or concepts that has already been developed in a previous research. Okay, so you have several models, maybe let's use a theory of diffusion of innovation. You know, that particular theory is something that exists and explains a certain phenomena and explains relationship between them. It's established that this is what it is, and that is a theory. Okay, and so if you were to pick that particular theoretical framework, you want to apply or superimpose towards your data set so that your theory of diffusion, for example, if you want to look at what constructs contribute to what diffusion of innovation, and you pick one and come to apply on, say, maybe a case study at GCTU to test to see whether those relationships apply or validate the theory, you are deemed to be doing what? Deductive research, or you are deductively reasoning. And you are in that you are moving from theory or applying theory to data. And by this way, you would want to test relationship. And so you generate hypothesis to test whether what the data you have collected, you want to test whether that theory holds true in a specific context. Okay. And so in simple terms, I'm saying that deductive reasoning moves from a deductive reasoning or a deductive lecturer, deductive researcher moves from theory to data. So, for example, again, let's suppose that there is an existing theory that suggests that student attendance improves academic performance. There's a theory like that. Let's call it GCT theory of attendance, improving attendance. Okay. So this theory exists. And so if a researcher, if you say Seram or Emmanuel, you decide, to adopt a deductive approach, okay? And you start with this particular theory, this GCTU attendance theory, improvement attendance theory. I'm saying let's just call it a theory, all right? And then you test whether it applies to a particular group of students, maybe University of Cape Coast. You pick that GCT theory that has been proved to be a theory. You pick it and say, yes, you've identified similar characteristics in University of Cape Coast, and you want to apply same, okay? That researcher or you might want to collect data on what? Student attendance, student scores, the same statistical analysis that was used and so on, all right? So you want to test whether this would bring the same outcome as to whether it increases or enables students to perform academically better. Now, if that particular data, pay attention, if that particular data supports that particular theory, yes, when you went to UCC and you tested that particular theory, you used that data and tested that particular, and it supports that theory, then you can conclude that what? The theory holds again in that particular context. But if the data does not support it, you can then say that no, you can reject that theory and say that theory does not apply in this context. Or you can say, oh, it doesn't apply in this context, but if I add this element, then you would expand that theory. In doing that type of research, I'm saying that that would be a deductive way of an approach to the research problem. So that would be deductive reasoning. And in deductive reasoning revolves around applying theory or superimposing theory onto the data in a given context or a particular context. Is that okay? Am I clear? Hey guys, am I clear? Are you here?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir, we are here.
Good. So deductive, this type of deductive research, therefore, it becomes more commonly used in what? Quantitative research. Do you see the correlation? Because once you get it, you are testing hypothesis, you are testing relationship, you are dealing with what? Numerical data. And so mostly it will be more quantitative. And by that extension too, if it's quantitative, what philosophical paradigm would that be? Can anybody help me here? Quick one. That would be what? Should we go back? That would be positivism, isn't it? Are we tired? Emmanuel, Sarah,
So yeah, listening.
I'm listening, but you need to respond so that I know I'm not talking to myself.
All right, sir.
Are we okay?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
All right. So do we agree? I'm saying that if we employ that type of deductive reasoning, then what are we doing? We are looking at data that comes in through using what? Numerical values. Is that not the case? And it
Yes,
goes
sir.
all the way into putting us into what? The philosophical box of what? Positivism. So deductive approaches are more positivist influenced. Then we have the inductive approach, right? So if the deductive approach was superimposing data onto the superimposing theory onto the data to test the relationship and so on and so forth, inductive will be the opposite, right? So inductive works in the opposite direction of what? Deductive reasoning. Here, instead of starting with theory, mind you, I said that deductive starts with theory, right? But here for the inductive, instead of starting with theory, the researcher just begins by collecting observations or collecting data. Is that okay? So the lecture, you just go and start asking you, and you want so more exploratory research. Clearly, this should tell you that look, this should be in the realms of exploration, isn't it? You just go begin to start collecting data, and data comes in various forms. You are observing. The observation is one form of data collection, right? Interviews are one form of data collection, right? So you want to collect of data, and then you examine that data in order to do what? Identify patterns or relationships. Based on these patterns and relationships, then the researcher can now develop concepts, all right, or theories out of them. And so it is the obtuse of it, or the other angle of deductive reasoning. Here, for inductive reasoning or inductive approaches, you are exploring and building theories. Okay? Your reasoning moves from the data to the theory, whilst the other one is the theory to the data. You have to pay particular attention. So if it's moving from the data to the theory, it will have to have a certain research type, and mostly inductive researches are mostly qualitative. Is that okay? So for example, I like normally giving this example of university settings. So imagine that a researcher, or imagine a researcher conducting an interview with university lecturers about their experiences with, say, blended learning. First one was AI in education, right? So once you are looking at, you are conducting interviews, mind you, you haven't gone there with a certain theory that tries to tell you that there's a blended learning theory. And so you have just gone in there empty-headed. You have no conceptual, theoretical, you've not been theoretically influenced. You go just asking questions, you know. So during these interviews, you may notice that there are recurring themes that you'll be picking up. You'll begin to hear the lecturers talk about technology, or tell you about environment. You know, you see student like questions like student support. You see questions like institutional engagement. Okay, when you analyze this data using this inductive approach, you may develop new theoretical explanation that describes, you know, the factors that are actually influencing the adoption of distance learning or the learning in that particular university. Do you understand? So I'm saying that the theory would immerse the data in inductive research, in inductive reasoning, whilst in the deductive reasoning, all right, the theory is superimposed on the data and tested. Good. So then it brings us to the third one, that is abductive. Okay. Abductive reasoning is slightly different from it's slightly more complex because it combines what? Both the deductive and then the inductive. In this same vein, you can clearly understand which type of philosophical views would apply here. Straight away, you can see is what? Pragmatism. Okay? Yes. So instead of strictly like starting with theory or strictly starting with, say, maybe data, abductive reasoning involves moving what? Back and forth between theory and data in order to identify the most what? Plausible explanation for a phenomenon. Right. With that said, it explains the three research approaches and strategies available for that we have discussed, right? So we said that deductive reasoning begins with theory and test it using empirical data. And inductive reasoning begins with observations and develops theory from patterns identified in the data. And then abductive reasoning involves back and forth between theory and then what? And data in order to develop the most convincing explanation. Right. So we have our last slide, which will bring the class to an end, maybe in the next 10 minutes. So I want us to discuss this concept that many students find confusing in research methods, okay? That concept is the difference between this methods versus methodology, okay? In many cases, we use these two terms interchangeably, right? But actually, they mean two different things. So I want to situate it for you in very good context. So Sarah, do the last reading for us, and then we'll ask questions, and then we can bring the lecture to an end. So methods versus methodology. Read research methods.
Okay. Research methods. The tools and techniques used to collect and analyze data. That is interviews, questionnaires, statistical tests. What you did.
What you did. Research methods is what you did. Okay? Research methods, it refers to specific techniques or tools that the researcher used to collect and analyze data is the what? Is the research method. In other words, there are the practical procedures used during what? The research process. Right? So these are the tools that would allow you, the researcher, to gather information, okay, and examine the problem that you are studying. So there are many several different types of research methods available, all right, depending on the nature of your research problem. So for example, one common research method is the survey, okay? So in a survey, researchers design questionnaires, all right, and distribute them to respondents in order to collect information about their opinions, behaviors, or what? Experiences, right? Another research method could be what? An interview. Interviews do what? They allow researchers to what? Ask participants questions directly and to obtain detailed responses about their experiences or perceptions. That's not the case. Good. Researchers may also use what? Experiments, where they manipulate certain variables in order to observe how these changes influence outcomes. You know, another method is observation. So these are examples of research methods. They are simply the tools, mind you, the tools that researchers use to gather and analyze data. Research methods are the tools that researchers use to gather and analyze data. So you are using observation to gather data, to analyze data. You are using an experiment, you are using an interview, you are using a survey. So these are the tools. So they become your research methods. Now let's look at the second concept. Sarah, quickly, on the research methodology. What is it?
Okay, the overall logic and justification for choosing certain methods. How
The
they fit
overall
your
logic.
yeah.
Go ahead. Good. So the overall logic and justification, okay, behind the
Yeah.
research design. So it is, if you like, it is the software. It is not the tools. It is the software. It is the logic. It is the mindset. All right. And how you piece the whole design together, the underlying code, the underlying design, it becomes the research methodology, but not the method. Do you get it? So research methods are tools, but the methodology is the underlying logic, the overall reasoning. Okay, why didn't I use surveys, but I used interviews? Why didn't I use regression and I used thematic analysis? Why did I use SPSS and I use this, okay, in my analysis? All right. Why you did that becomes your research methodology. You have to say that because my underlying philosophy is positivism, all right? You get it? It's positivism, and positivists think this way. They observe the world through measurable facts and so on and so forth. So therefore, I used what? My methodology, I used what? This approach. I use a quantitative method, all right? And my quantitative method, I use this to collect this data. Okay, I used this to analyze this. Once it was quantitative, I couldn't have used thematic analysis to analyze quantitative data. No, if I was an interpretivist and I was used qualitative methods and I had used interviews, then I had textual data that I can interpret. Okay, and so research methodology now becomes overall logic. In other words, methodology can explain why the researcher chose particular methods, okay, and how those methods fit the researcher's objective and your research philosophy, okay. So methodology, therefore, now would focus on the thinking behind the research process rather than the tools themselves, okay. So another example, imagine a researcher studying how universities are like universities, how universities students experience online learning, right? So now, with this imagination, you want to study how universities students experience online learning, right? And because it's experience, you may decide to conduct what interviews with the students, isn't the case? Because these are experiences. So the interview itself will become the what? Between method and methodology, what do you think the interview will become? Quickly. Stephen, will become a what?
Method.
Say again.
Method.
Good. It will become a research method. Good. All right. However, if the researcher must explain why the interviews were chosen instead of survey or experiments, what would that be? And he has explained it. And perhaps you are believing that your understanding of student experiences require detailed explanation and rather than maybe using numerical data, right? So therefore, you adopted an interpretivist research philosophy, which emphasizes that human experiences and meanings is the best approach, right? Is that also? So based on that philosophy, the researcher may choose what? A qualitative research methodology, which supports methods such as what? Interviews and observations. You get it? Right? So
Yes, sir.
this explanation of why the research was designed in this way, my brothers and sisters, is what I'm saying is what refers to research methodology.
Methodology.
Is that clear?
Yes, sir.
On that note, I'm saying that research methods are tools used to collect what? And analyze data. Whilst what? Methodology is the reasoning and justification behind the selection of these what? Tools. Okay? Right. So on that note, I would bring the class to an end here and then invite questions from you. Any questions?
No, sir.
No. I can't be talking all this while and you tell me no, sir. What does that mean? Means that you understand everything, so that's fine. So I would come and I'm asking questions now, right? Good. Who answered no, sir? Who answered no, sir? Now you won't talk. Hello. All right. So I'm hoping that with no feedback now, we all have a grasp of the foundation of research methods, right? So today we have learned that what? Research is a systematic process used to answer what? Questions using evidence, right? We discussed the characteristics of what? Good research. Let me ask, Mr. Kojo Francis, what are some of the characteristics of a good research? Anybody who can help here, quickly, let's do it as we wrap up. What were your key takeaways of a characteristic of good research? We said there should be clarity, there should be rigor, there should be what? Relevance. You should make a contribution. Let's do that quickly. We said there were different types of research, right? How many types of research did we say we have? Can we do that quickly? Yes, my people, no. Let's do that quickly.
We have quantitative, qualitative research.
Yeah, so we have qualitative, quantitative, and mixed methods, right?
Yes.
Great, super. And then we discussed what? Research philosophies. And we said we had what types of philosophies? We have what?
So the pragmatism
Yes, pragmatism,
and
Positivism.
positivism.
positivism,
Interpretivism.
interpretivism. Good. Right. And then we look at research approaches. We said we had what? We had, yes, we have the deductive reasoning approach, right? And then we
Yes,
have
the
the
inductive,
inductive
abductive.
reasoning approach. And then we have the what? Abductive reasoning approach, right? So my brothers and sisters, in the coming weeks, we'll go deeper into topics such as research design. We'll look at sampling, data collection, data analysis. But everything begins with the concept that we have discussed today. Would apply these ideas to a group research design exercise, which I would share, so that you can understand it better, okay? But I urge that we try and look, this is the foundation of the research that you have learned in 2 hours and a half. If you have a good grasp of this, as I have clearly explicated, where you know, because that will form the basis of your research design. You understand your philosophy, you know the approach you are using, you know your research type you are using, you know your research method and research methodologies are fine. Okay. So on that note, if there are no questions, I want to end here and say I enjoyed the lecture. I look forward to meet you again next week. Course rep, please, Monday, tomorrow, send me a message requesting for the reading material and then the lecture slides, okay? On that note,
Okay.
have a good evening. I'll see you again next week. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.